Hello everyone, the Crime Life channel is with you. Blanche Monnier disappeared from this world when she was only 26 years old. An attractive and good-natured girl in 1875 was a typical French socialite trying to find a groom, but this aspiration cost her dearly. As it turns out later, the heiress of a huge fortune spent a quarter of a century in hell, which her own mother arranged for her. And if it weren't for chance, no one would have found out that representatives of the richest French family with an impeccable reputation had been slowly, painfully killing a member of their family for more than 25 years. A strange letter. In May 1901, the Attorney General of Paris received a letter stating that a famous family of the city had been keeping a terrible secret for 25 years. I want to inform you about an emergency. We are talking about an old maid who is imprisoned in the house of Madame Monnier. Starving, she has been living in her sewage for more than 25 years. At first, the police officers did not want to believe the anonymous letter, but the prosecutor gave an order to immediately verify how true the creepy details described in the message were. The Monnier family mentioned in the letter represented an ancient French aristocratic family living in the city of Poitiers. Their large residence was located in the richest part, and the elder of the family, Louise Monnier, and her son Marcel lived in it. Arriving at the estate, the police asked the hostess to give them the opportunity to inspect the house, but Madame Louise categorically refused. This aroused even more suspicion, and the prosecutor issued an official search warrant. Eventually, the officers entered the building, searched numerous rooms for a long time, until they found something that would shock the whole country. In a tiny room in the attic, a woman of indeterminate age lay in her own feces and leftovers with tangled hair. All she had at her disposal was a mattress and rags. It was Blanche, Louise's daughter, who mysteriously disappeared 25 years ago. Blanche was an amazingly beautiful girl. The cops were so amazed by the eerie smell and decay of the place that they couldn't stay there for more than a few minutes, whereas Blanche had been surviving in this place all these years. The woman was immediately taken to the hospital. His mother and brother were arrested. Hospital staff reported that although Blanche was terribly emaciated, when she was rescued she weighed only 30 kilograms. The captive was sane, and that scared everyone even more. That is, all these years the girl understood what was happening to her. She was born into a rich family. Baby Blanche Monnier was born on March 1st, 1849 in France, in a very rich and respected family. Blanche had an older brother named Marcel Monnier, and they were both considered heirs. When Blanche was still a child, her father died, who left the family an inheritance sufficient for them to live in prosperity for a long time. Blanche grew up to be a woman of dazzling beauty. She had beautiful, thick, dark hair and big, mesmerizing eyes. In addition, her kind and gentle disposition made her almost an ideal candidate for a wife for any man. The bachelors lined up behind her, but she was in no hurry to make a choice. Louise Monnier is Blanche's domineering mother. Blanche Monnier's relationship with Louise Monnier, her mother, was not the best. The domineering and controlling mother cared only about one thing: how to marry Blanche to a wealthy man. The idea of a rich widow was to preserve the family fortune at the expense of her daughter's marriage. The reason for the imprisonment. At the age of 25, Blanche Monnier met and fell madly in love with a lawyer much older than herself. Unfortunately, the daughter's chosen one did not meet Louise's expectations from a potential son-in-law. He did not come from an influential family and was not very successful in his profession. However, Blanche decided to get her way and got engaged to her lover. The bride and groom did not enjoy their happiness for long, as a few days after the announcement of the good news, the girl disappeared. On March 1st, 1875, Louise Monnier reported her daughter missing to the police. Many people knew about the conflict between the two women in Poitiers, so it was initially believed that Blanche had run away with her lover. However, it soon became clear that the girl's chosen one was still in the city, and he was shocked by the disappearance of his beloved. Monnier's family has long mourned the tragedy that befell them. Her mother and brother insisted that they knew absolutely nothing about the girl's whereabouts. Days, months, and years passed, but no information about Blanche's whereabouts appeared. Her life was supposed to be full of happiness and love, and after a few years, they began to forget about this case. There was nothing to indicate a murder or an accident. No one, including the police, had any idea if she was alive or not. It took more than a quarter of a century for the truth to finally come out. In 1875, Louise forcibly locked her daughter under lock and key until she renounced her love. But Blanche never did. A terrible punishment was chosen for the rebellious daughter, a cruel home prison. The girl remained in it even after the death of the groom 9 years later. All this time, her mother fed her peels and leftovers from the table, although there were times when she did not even get this mediocre substitute for food. Blanche's only company was the rats and cockroaches that filled her room. Medical examinations conducted later showed that her muscles were completely atrophied, and her body seemed to consist only of skin and bones. The doctors did not believe that she had managed to survive such a long period in such terrible conditions. That's the kind of Blanche the police found. The nurses who cared for Blanche later recalled how warmly and kindly she treated them. The woman was insanely happy that she could finally wash thoroughly and see daylight again. Unfortunately, more than 25 years of imprisonment led to severe photophobia, which did not allow her to constantly enjoy daylight. Justice has not been served. Monnier's daughter was dubbed the prisoner of Poitiers by the press. Her story quickly spread across the country, causing widespread horror and outrage. Her mother and brother were arrested, but Louise died of a heart attack 15 days after the case was solved. They say her last words were, "Oh, my poor Blanche." Marcel Monnier appeared in court and was sentenced to 15 months in prison for complicity. However, he did not serve even this lenient sentence, as he very quickly appealed against it. The man claimed that he had never forced his sister to stay locked up, and that everything was the idea of a Machiavellian parent. Despite widespread public outrage and protests outside the court, the case was resolved in his favor. Marcel Monnier was acquitted. Blanche never recovered after 25 years of ordeal during the trial. It also turned out that, in addition to the family and servants, the neighbors could also know about the girl's imprisonment. It turns out that they heard screams coming from Monnier's house more than once, but they never intervened. Who is the author of the saving letter? The author of the anonymous note that helped uncover this tragedy is still unknown. Some believe that it was an outsider who accidentally found out about Blanche's unfortunate fate. Others claim that it could have been Marcel himself, who, knowing about his mother's advanced age, wanted to disclose his sister's detention during her lifetime and thus place all responsibility on her mother. And what happened to Blanche herself? Unfortunately, she did not manage to return to society. She never fully recovered, either physically or mentally. She spent the rest of her life in a psychiatric hospital, where she died 12 years later in 1913. She was 64 years old at the time.